This audio presentation of Greater Works by Lilian DeWaters is brought to you by audioenlightenment.com. Copyright 2014. All rights reserved. Spiritual discrimination. Those who are prepared for these days await them with praise and thanksgiving and joyous expectancy. To us the question is not if God is on our side, but are we on God's side? How shall we know? Very simply. Do we have continuous light and illumination in our heart? Do we have love, unity, and freedom? Let each one answer these questions for himself. When one turns from human and mental help to God as the one who is all, spontaneously he enters into spirituality, reality, oneness. On the side of personality, one identifies himself as a man, a mortal, a human being, living in a human existence. Here there are many ways of self-healing, many minds to be changed through self-thinking. There are many works, demonstration, doctrines, many leaders, many followers. There is confusion, labor, disunity, strife. On the side of spirituality we have illumination, which is our completeness, wholeness, harmony, and supply ever present. Day after day we are filled with new light. Night after night we enjoy sweet peace, security, and rest. Not only is it possible for us to receive the guidance of angels, but to see them as well. He shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. Psalm 91:11. In the realm of illumination all these things are possible, for with God nothing shall be impossible. Luke 1:37. When we know the truth about God, it is God in us knowing the truth about himself. This relieves us of all personal sense. It is hard for one to know the truth about himself because it is himself that he is thinking of instead of God. God's ways are perfect. They are in continual operation. His sight is never dim. God supplies himself from out of the infinitude of himself. God is all to himself. Himself is all there is of ourselves. God is mind. Mind can never be deprived of itself. God is love. Love cannot divorce itself. The place wherein we stand and the place where God is his own safety, his own security, his own peace. Everything in himself is fully held by him. His whole universe of perfection and completeness is in him, and he in it. God is in his own illumination, his own revelation, his own heaven. We have always been God, for God is all there is. One becomes aware of this fact only as he stops serving other gods. Spiritual discrimination reveals thinking to have been the very reason for our sleep. Love for the one as the whole of us shall be our awakening. Here we are not in the flesh, but in the spirit. We are not of this world, but of the kingdom. Ye are not in the flesh, but in spirit, if so be that the Spirit of God dwell in you. Romans 8:9. My kingdom is not of this world. John 18:36. We live where our illumination lives, in spiritual light, in spiritual love, in spiritual freedom, in spiritual wholeness, in spiritual existence. We know about God, for he is, what he is, where he is. We know about Christ, who he is, what he is, where he is. We know about us, who we are, what we are, where we are. We know the all to be one, and the one to be all. We know this because we are emptied of mental ways, wherein there is no self-illumination. We know that our God, whom we love continually, he will deliver us. Self-knowledge has always been the theme of the illumined, who know and teach God and the self to be one. As long as one believes himself to be separate from God, he will remain mortal to himself. Sooner or later, everyone must release himself from a hypothetical mind of his own and turn unconditionally to God, identifying himself with God alone. Mental practice pertains to personal minds, thoughts, and conditions. Mental practice relates to a separateness which does not exist. Therefore, its curative ways of personal mind and thinking are temporal at their best, contributing a more comfortable human existence to some, but bearing no relation to the self-existent and ever-present things of spirit. Holding oneself separate from the one, even by a hair's breadth, is not close enough to him who is our very life itself. Nothing is close enough but for us to be the one. Scriptures of all nations denote the word oneness to mean I am. Today many are rushing hither and yon for the weight of security, a peace and refuge from fear and suffering, man turning to man consulting man treating man healing man fearing man killing man. I know not what they do. Luke 23:24. Personality is a loom in which illusions are woven. What is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Matthew 16:26. Our safety is in finding God within our own heart. Seek no other way. If one does not identify himself with the Infinite One alone, then in his darkened sense he sees another world which he wishes to have made over. Any vain attempt he makes to demonstrate over sickness, or to destroy the evil he sees about him, is but part of the veil he has put over his heart. When the veil is removed, he will see clearly. The spiritually illumined, knowing the nature of eternal things, do not seek for peace and security among the fleeting things of man and mind. They know the things of the real to be ever present, undefiled and undefilable. They know that God is all. They know that all is God. If one is devoid of spiritual discrimination, he fails to distinguish between mental practice, which concerns itself with personal minds and personal thinking, and the absolute way, which requires our renunciation of personal mind altogether, and our identification with the one mind alone. We have the mind of Christ, 1 Corinthians 2:16. Personality is disunity, iniquity, greed, distrust, strife, fear. Synonymous words denoting separateness are the following: carnal, mortal, mental, human, material, mesmerism, mortal mind, devil, evil, and hell. The word mental pertains to assumptive individual minds alone, their ways, doctrines, methods, and practice. The way of the one mind is the way of Christ, surrender of the personal for identification with God alone. I and my Father are one. Darkness shall continue to appear in one's world until he surrenders personal ego and makes place in his heart for the living truth. Mental practice prolongs human bondage. It gives power to man when he has none. Power belongeth unto God, Psalm 62:11. There is nothing mental in God. Freedom begins for one when he surrenders human thinking and in meekness and humility makes room for Christ's light. Then he enters the joy of the self. The shining light within him is his almighty power, his ever-present peace, and his imperishable glory. Personality is loyal to personality. It authorizes its own works. It is its own authority. Christ and personality cannot dwell together. Christ is oneness, allness, cosmic light, peace, and glory. No one can heal an unreal thing. No one can change an unreal mind. No one can obtain heaven as an acquisition or translate human thinking into the mind of Christ. Those who have not yet identified themselves with the one mind as the only mind, there is now or ever shall be, keep glamoring with greater healings, tangible proofs of what their minds can do. A sorry web one weaves when once he believes that of himself he can do anything. He should let go of such vain ambition altogether, and looking toward the eternal heights, glimpse eternal things. Healed bodies, regenerated human beings, psychoanalyzed minds are unknown to God. How inconsequential the gain of any demonstrated thing in human existence compared to the richness, fullness, and brightness of spiritual things revealed to us in spiritual existence. What shall we then say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? Romans 8:31. The absolute message. Let no one entertain the mistaken belief that the absolute way does not provide the way of escape from sickness, sorrow, and limitation. True, it does not do so by way of any mental practice, but by the way which is entirely apart from it, the Christ way, I am. The mental may have its word for those who want merely a healing of ills, but for those who are of spirit and will take no lesser way, the mental holds no meaning. The spiritual way to harmony and wholeness is the Christ way, the way of the Absolute. Here we come to God. Through inner illumination we are instructed of God spiritually. We receive peace, light, glory, discords vanish as shadows. Not only are we freed of them, but our gain has been for eternity, since we have been quickened by the love and light of Spirit. We know God to be everything that is needful, good, pure, and complete. God is our mind. God is our life. God is our fullness and completeness right here and now. We have need of no other help than omnipotence within us. Spiritual illumination is Christ in you, your only true and perfect way of escape from world tribulation and bondage. Spiritual light in the heart, uplifting and glorifying us, plants our feet in the spiritual world now. Here we are free, not by means of any mental healing, but by virtue of the fact that our purity and our wholeness is the Christ self. Wisdom and knowledge are here, the riches of understanding, life that is glorious, and peace that is permanent and enduring. In Christ shall all be made alive, 1 Corinthians 15:22. If any man be in Christ, he is a new creature, 2 Corinthians 5:17. The mystery of the indwelling Christ is revealed. It is our own inner revelation. It is our own light. The light which comes to us from within ourselves is Christ's light. This light is neither of personality nor mentality. It is of God, it is of spirit, it is of the self. The absolute message is not private doctrine, personal discovery, or self-styled mental practice. It identifies itself with self-surrender and the re-identification of ourselves with God through spiritual light within us. Bibles of all the nations are unanimous in their recognition of the steps one must take from personality into spirituality, from bondage into freedom, and from things of the perishable and mutable into life everlasting. As follows: 1. In the heart alone can we find God. 2. Surrender of the personal, self-renunciation. 3. Identification with God through spiritual light. Spiritual light and illumination can be experienced by all who turn from personality to God. Mental ways are limited to personality. Never could they become universal. Christ and mental ways are contrary the one to the other. One is of God, the other of man. Christ is not mentality, personality, or practitioner. Christ is the light of God within our own hearts. Therefore, there can be oneness in cosmic Christ alone. Personality is the Adam man, the mentality man. Christ is the spiritual identity of all who are reborn and have identified themselves as the one who is all and the all who is one. Beloved, seek no personal fame, exalt no personal name. The name I am is our real name from eternity. Trace not your origin back to Adam. In Adam all die. Our immunity lies in oneness alone. World chaos is the struggle and strife of personality and mentalities. There are days of tribulations foretold for those who do not identify themselves as the divine mind alone. Every way of personal man is doomed to perish. The falling away, 2 Thessalonians 2:3, has already begun. God is not mocked. I am the everlasting gospel to preach upon them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. Saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to him that made heaven, and earth, and the sea, and the fountains of water. Who shall not fear thee, O Lord, and glorify thy name? For thou only art holy. All nations shall come and worship before thee. Revelations 15:4. In order that we be entitled to truth, we must have truth in our heart. In order that we live in the realm of the real, we must have purity in our heart. If we humbly and earnestly love the real and the true above all else, and long for it with our whole heart, suddenly we shall find ourselves in it, and it in us. Then shall we know that we never left it, regardless of the seeming. Christ is our own inner light, our power and our glory. Christ was the joy of Jesus. Christ was the light of Jesus. Christ was the power of Jesus. Christ was the glory of Jesus. Christ was the victory of Jesus. The same joy, light, power, glory, and victory which Jesus possessed belong to all who stop trying to be someone of themselves. In the presence of our humility, personality vanishes. We are the one alone. There are not two worlds, the spiritual and the material. There are not two identities of us, the spiritual and the mortal. The one world is the kingdom of God. The one identity of us is the Christ self. As we die to the unreal and desire the spiritual and real of us alone, we find the heavenly city of God to be within the depth of our own heart. Our heart is the seat of our love, devotion, purity, perfection, wisdom, sincerity, faith, trust, fidelity, tenderness, and heaven. Those who would realize the reality of themselves must turn aside from the world and from all personal teaching and seek truth within in the heart. Here is safety, peace, security, wholeness, and bliss. Where is our Heavenly Father? In our heart. Where is Christ? In our heart. Where is God's throne? In our heart. Where is the kingdom of God and the peace that passes all understanding? In our heart. Heart, love, devotion, and purity are identical in meaning. Illumination, light, inspiration, intuition, and revelation arise and abide in the pure of heart. Here is our freedom from fear, struggle, and strife. In this light we are lighted. We are without fear or trembling. This spiritual light within us is our all-powerful, almighty God at hand, ours for eternity. Fear, doubt, gloom, or suffering cannot remain when the light of the eternal glows within us. Our perfection, wholeness, peace, and security cannot be demonstrated or brought to pass by any mental practice. They are revealed to those who cast out personal ego, and so see by the eye of spirit. Darkness cannot dwell in light. Likewise, when we lay down the personal self and with all-absorbing love and devotion desire the divine mind alone, shadows of darkness leave us. We ask no one to prove truth to us. With the shining of the heavenly light within us, truth is self-evident. Shadows cannot linger in the radiance of our love. Without this purity of heart, one's world cannot be free of discord and dissension. Purity alone makes illumination possible. We must give ourselves wholly to it, if we would receive the fullness of its presence. The purer our love, the greater is our light, and the more perfect our freedom. Then the veil is removed, and we experience reality itself. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? Psalm 2:1 asks the psalmist. Because they identify themselves falsely with that which is not. While one fights his thoughts with his thoughts, while he identifies himself with things of the unreal, a veil or mist covers his heart, so that he cannot see clearly things that are real. Never can mental practice take one into the depths of his being, yet here is where he must go, into unknown regions of himself. He must reach until he finds a place within himself, which is called the within, the heart. This way is for those alone who are inwardly drawn to God, who believe that God is, and to God belongs the power and glory, perfection and peace of the universe. Stopping all struggle and effort, making unconditional surrender to the Eternal One suddenly, like a wind which comes, yet no one knows from whence. The presence is with one, round and about him. Bathed in light of the eternal, he is no longer himself. He knows that God and the self are one. There is a spiritual myth of India which contains deep wisdom and light. It tells of a council of the gods at which it was purposed to invest man with deity. A debate arose as to how it might be entrusted to him without his misusing it. One suggested that it might be buried in the depths of the sea, so he would not easily find and abuse it. Another advised to place it on the most inaccessible mountaintop. Finally, the supreme head of the assembly declared that he thought of a place where no man would look, in the deepest chamber of man's own heart. Our Christian Bible contains the same message in the following quotations. He hath set the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. Ecclesiastes 3:11. Ye shall seek me and find me, when ye shall search for me with all your heart. I will give them a heart to know me. The pure in heart shall see God. One's failure to find the true God and eternal life keeps him separate from the infinite, indivisible selfhood, as though he were outside of it, where everything appears to him to be perishable and changeable, including himself, his mind, body, thoughts, world, and experience. Therefore, to experience living light, one must glimpse in such a way as to inspire him to desire God, his real self, beyond all else. How far away from one is his heart? Only so far as he is turned from it. Our real self and our real experience is right at hand, if and when we can see and take it by our spiritual approach to it, our spiritual perception of it, and our spiritual abidance in it. Therefore, instead of attempting to build up his personal thinking, one should be deliberating how he can cut himself off from it altogether, and so escape the inevitable doubt and fear, sickness, and death. He should be pondering how he can find that which is unconditioned, that which is absolute and pure. When he comes face to face with that, then he knows the truth. Then he knows that God is all. Then he knows that all is God. The Absolute or Christ message reveals the way to life, without death to heaven, without personal achievement, to health, without healing, and to happiness, harmony, and peace, without practice of mental cause and effect. Spiritual perception of the real convinces us that preparation of the heart is the only prerequisite to fearless freedom and spiritual peace. This is the very reason why those trained in metaphysics find the understanding of the Absolute so difficult of comprehension. They know little or nothing of the heart. They have been taught that each has a mind of his own, and that with his personal mind he can know the truth. He can heal thought, body, and conditions for himself and for others. The Absolute is not concerned with minds that are not real. The Absolute is the truth itself. It stands alone. It is the one mind, the only intelligence there is of anyone. The way of the heart. Sacred writings of the East contain vitally illuminating words relative to our way to perfection as follows. The self is subtler than the subtle, greater than the great. It dwells in the heart of every living thing, yet it is unperceived by ordinary mortals because of its subtlety. It cannot be perceived by the senses. A finer spiritual sense is required. The self is the indivisible essence of everything, that upon which all existence rests. The self cannot be attained by the study of the Scripture, nor by intellectual perception, nor by frequent hearing of it. He whom the self chooses, to him alone it is attained. To him the self reveals its true nature. We may imagine that by much study we can find out God. Knowledge only comes through direct perception, and direct perception is possible for those alone who are pure in heart and spiritually awakened. Although he is alike to all beings, and his mercy is on all, yet the impure and worldly minded do not get the blessing, because they do not know how to open their hearts to it. He who longs for God, him the Lord chooses. Because of him alone he revealed his true nature. From the Upanishads. Wonderful words indeed, deep, stirring, self-convincing. Many may have wondered why all do not desire truth alike, and all know truth the same, since God is identical in all. The answer is now made plain simple in the above quotation. Our own Bible coincides with it as follows. Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Him that cometh to me I will in no wise cast out. No man can come to me except the Father draw him. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. All illumined teachings declare that in order for one to receive light and illumination, he must humbly and truly thirst for it, and desire it above all other desires. Things of spirit are the real and the eternal things of God. They alone experience them who are spiritually awakened, and have proof of God within their own heart. The spiritually awakened cannot accept the mental way, because they know the very word mental to be contrary to the one mind. Mental pertains to those who claim a mind of their own. Thus their very foundation is duality, double-visioned, double-tongued, multiple mind, thoughts, and methods. Mental practice deals with mental cause, mental effect, mental sickness, mental healing and mental conditions, mental treatments, none of which belongs to God, who is one divine mind. The term demonstration also implies duality. One may demonstrate over a certain sickness, but he shall continue subject to other discords, and so be in need of further healing. In fact, it will be a continuous program. Identification with the mind of one's own is the very source of all tribulations. How vain the theory of man, that he can heal the very thing he himself has created out of darkness. Man can treat sickness from now until doomsday, and never can he bring sickness to an end. Only when he humbles himself and turns himself completely to the one God will tribulation be wiped from the earth. Personal application of personal doctrines frees no one, for there is no spiritual gain in mental practice. Whatever gain one believes he has made is temporal, belonging to man living in a human state. The struggle is in his face, terrific and deep, searching for peace, through nights without sleep, through days of endeavor, to win spirit through flesh, to disentangle himself from earth's mesh. Mildred Hayward. Where is scientific reasoning? Not in God, I, where is mental work? Not in the one mind, I human, material and mental ways of healing are of man who is ever attempting to improve himself, and so to increase his days here on earth as a human being. They are good for man, they are legitimate for man, but never should they be confused with the spiritual way of Christ. The Christ or absolute way reveals our spiritual way to spiritual wholeness, harmony and peace to be in our surrender of the personal and mental for our identification with the one God, the one Christ, the one body, the one universe, the one existence. I am that I am. One cannot find his heart until he is willing to put things of man and mind aside. As soon as truth shines in his heart, he will begin to transcend the apparent duality of his nature. Then he will know that which is beyond mind and thinking. The true seeker may wonder, how can I know that which is beyond mind and thinking? He sees that if God could be known mentally by human mind and thinking, then God knowledge would be like any other knowledge, perishable and non-eternal. In place of his humility and wonderment, his sense of duality vanishes, and the cause of his ignorance and limitation is gone. Well may the question be asked, if I must lay down my personal sense, as the Bible states, and let the divine mind be all of me, how can I do this? If I turn from my thinking, I am destitute of any ways of procedure, since I have no way of thinking except by this mind. Heed the answer carefully. Unknown to those who have accepted a mind of their own as their only way of thinking, their only way to God and the things of his kingdom, there exists the true way to God, which is the way of the heart. This true way is the way of love. Our first commandment is, Thou shalt love, and the second commandment reiterates the first, Thou shalt love. subtly concealed in our Bible in the word heart, is our way of deliverance. The mystical meaning of the word heart is love and devotion. One's first step, therefore, away from personality, mentality, and duality is to love God supremely and all-absorbingly as His perfect mind, His perfect life, His perfect being. This very instant, His renunciation of personal mind has begun. A warm glow of peace comes effortlessly over him. Love is real. Love is spirit. From now on he will think from the seat of his heart. From the heart is known by the illumined to be the seat of divine mind and divine thinking. They alone have found purity in their heart who can see the things of the real and spiritual, and are identified as the one divine mind. Love restores us to our own. When one believes himself to be a human being, in a human existence, dependent upon a spurious mind to conduct him to heaven, he is asleep to his real self, as one in a dream. The true way out of sleep into reality is the way of love. Our entire Bible contains the story of our sleep, and our way out of it into everlasting life, the revelation to us of divine love. Love is our deliverer and deliverance. The preparations of the heart in man is of the Lord. The pure in heart shall see God. Only purity can behold purity. Only perfection can enter perfection. God has given us a heart to love Him and to hear His voice. God is love. Therefore we must come to God through love. God is the all-pure. Therefore we must come to God through purity. The heart alone can turn to God in love and be pure enough to be our way out of sleep. Love frees us from the dream of separateness. Spiritual illumination shows us how to render to man the things that are man's, and to God the things that are God's. God's way is the universal way, the spiritual way, the only way, the way of the heart. This way shuts out mental thinking altogether. Today, many would willingly pay any price just to escape from their own thinking. The perfect way exists. Not only can one bring his personal thinking to an end, but he can arise out of sleep and be his real self in spiritual existence now. Dear friend, love the ways of God. Love the things of God. Love to be obedient to Him. Love to watch for light to be revealed to you from within yourself. Love the absolute fact that even now your perfection and wholeness are with you. They are present right where you are. Your happiness is in living in the light of oneself. Your joy is in receiving self-illumination. Your every need is taken care of spontaneously, naturally, as you live in the light and love of the eternal. Keep turning from thinking to loving, and your amazement will be great and your freedom self-evident. Everything of spirit relates to the heart. Our wholeness and peace are the natural harmony of our being. Our spiritual realization is our all-sufficiency. Our faith and trust in reality itself constantly expands into self-realization. Believing in the one mind alone, we make no attempt to change anyone or anything. The one mind practices no healing. The one mind gives no treatments. With its own brightness, it reveals its own perfection everywhere. Spirit loves spiritual things. Our love is coupled with truth in words such as inspiration, intuition, illumination, light, glory, revelation, oneness, allness, unity. These words are living bread to us, substance itself. Blessed are they who know with the real, eternal mind. Blessed are they who love with a pure, devoted heart. Then, taking no thought for demonstration, spontaneously, naturally, they experience the eternal now, eternal love, radiance, light, oneness, beauty, joy, peace throughout eternity. Already may have found the way of the heart to be the Christ way, and have entered even now into life everlasting, into truth ever abiding, into peace and joy ever expanding and rejoicing. They see reality by that which is real in itself, Christ illumination. Important spiritual activities expounded in the Bible relating us to our true spiritual existence are found in such words as the following: come, see, behold, perceive, learn, hear, hearken, feel, believe, receive, take, let, abide. As we experience these activities of mind, they spontaneously increase our faith and trust in reality itself. Hence they continually bring us into a greater and more effulgent light, illumination, and glory. We can hear the voice, feel the touch, and be aware of the presence. Dear friend, loving the real and the eternal supremely, you will not be void of thinking. Thoughts will spring from your heart spontaneously, and they will be exalted, happy thoughts, thoughts of joy, wonder, and peace. Inspirational thinking is the natural activity of the self. One would not attempt to control it personally, any more than he would attempt to control his breathing. Our thinking never gives any concern, once we have found the way of devotion and abide steadfastly in it. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. Revelations 2:7. What is it that we are to overcome? Not sin, sickness, and death, as though they were each a thing of itself to be treated and healed. We are to overcome the sense of separateness of personal mind which creates them. When this is accomplished through our spiritual awakening as the real self, then no longer is there duality. There is the single self. Shadows called sickness or suffering cannot be found in the brightness of our glory. It is Christ's power. It is omnipotence. Humbly, earnestly, completely relinquishing any claim to a mind of our own, immediately we are aware of love. Our thinking is gloriously wonderful and happy. We know we are the truth. We think with our real mind. We live in spiritual existence. We are the self alone. Our abundance, happiness, and wholeness are revealed to us. The spiritual light of ourself is greater than the light of sun or stars. It is the light of the heavenly city within us. We walk in our own light, safely and securely. Everyone will begin to feel peace and calm the very instant he turns from a mind of his own. He walks with God, he talks with God, troubles vanish. He knows not when or how. He recalls the promise, perfect love casts out fear. He asks himself the question, what is perfect love? Immediately the answer comes to him, perfect love is love for the perfect. He knows then that he has perfect love, for he loves the perfect with all his heart. We love our wholeness. We love our God self. We believe implicitly that God's works are finished from the foundation of the world. This is the glorious truth that we love. In our perfect loving of reality itself, we have no fear, we have no sickness, we have no sorrow. We are no longer a man, we are no longer of human existence. We have entered into oneness. We behold the all as unity. Beloved, seek God where God is to be found, in the depths of your own heart. Face God within yourself. In the brightness of the light you will find your wholeness, harmony, and security to be your living and eternal reality. Man, unenlightened to the true and real way of love in the heart, seeks to heal the shadows of his sleep by physical and mental ways of his own. He has discovered that by making use of his own thinking, he can cure his own ills as well as the ills of others. This way, however, does not bring wholeness, peace, or security. At any moment he is subject to other limitations. The sorrowful tragedy is that even though he knows his mind to be unpredictable, unsound, and subject to fear and death, still he believes that through his personal right thinking he can elevate and translate it into the mind of Christ. The way to peace, wholeness, and security is the way of the Spirit. Spiritual enlightenment. By light, love, and purity in the heart, we may enter in through the gates into the city. Revelations 22:14. Never attempt to heal a man or a thing. See reality instead. See the one being to include all. See the spiritual universe to be the only world there is. Whom or what would you treat? Surely not the divine mind. Surely not thing of reality. Is it not gross darkness to treat a personal mind? How can there be a personal mind if God is all, and God is one, and God is infinite mind? He who treats personal minds has not yet removed the veil from his own eyes. He needs to interpret aright the spiritual instruction of the Master as follows. Cast out first the beam out of thy own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to pull out the mote that is in thy brother's eye. Luke 6:42. What is the beam? The personal belief of many instead of the spiritual awareness of the one. Why treat an unreal mind or a thing that is not real? Where is the place of unreality? What is the chaff to the wheat, saith the Lord? Who art thou, that hath feared continually every day because of the fury of the oppressor, as if we were ready to destroy? And where is the fury of the oppressor? Isaiah 51:13. Until one lets personality die, casts the ego sense, he sees multiplicity everywhere instead of the infinite one. Furthermore, who is it that does the treating? Not the all-pure divine mind. What mind then? It must necessarily be an assumptive, unreal mind. Through purity of the heart alone can one see the perfect by the perfect, and understand the glorious reality. For there is one God, and there is none other but He. Mark 12:32. The spiritual light and awareness is that of the Self, the Christ, where we are all one. So we, being many, are one body in Christ, and every one members one of another. Romans 12:5. Awake, redeemed alive forevermore, we are verily the house of God, which is the church of the living God. 1 Timothy 3:15. Beloved, love purity, love singleness of vision, love things of reality, love to sacrifice personal self. Spiritual loving blots out the ego sense. Spiritual loving brings spiritual light. Spiritual loving brings freedom from fear, sickness, sorrow. In spiritual love, we are the illumined mind. We are imperishable life. We are the children of light and the children of day. We hear the Eternal's voice saying, I have chosen you out of the world. I have given you a heart to find me. I have given you a will to worship me. I have given you a love to leave all for me. You are drawing nigh to me, and I am drawing nigh to you. We are one. Keep your heart flooded with light. Fill your heart with holiest desires. I always hear you. You are mine. I am with you always. I am yours eternally. Glorify thou me. Renunciation. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. Deuteronomy 6:5. He who loves truly, divinely, all-absorbingly, hastens to follow every single gleam of light, to leave all and follow the one. Such love does not consider a more suitable time to break away from one's present bondage or from ties which bind him, for things to reshape themselves so that he can better formulate how his supply will be forthcoming, and his friendship remain unbroken. The ready, willing heart does not measure and weigh, consider and tabulate. He does not linger a single moment to consider the price. So willing is he to pay the uttermost farthing at once. Is not this the reality that has been waiting and longing for, lo, these many years? His joy knows no bounds as he opens his heart fully and completely to admit the divine light, unconditionally and without reservation. Those who need time to weigh just what they will be required to give up and just what they will receive in return find the way not an easy one. To part with personal leader or teacher may be perhaps very sorrowful, deliberated by those who have considered him or her to have been the world's last revelter. When God asks for a humble, contrite heart, it may seem to some as though they were obliged to give up their very life, for they have great possessions in personality and personal ways. When truly faced, God only asks that we let him be our very self, that we become nothing of ourselves, and that all others become nothing of themselves to us, so that he, the living God, may fill our hearts completely with himself, and ever be our all in all. How much longer shall one personality to be the veil separating him from God? He that shall come will come, and will not tarry. Let your heart therefore be perfect with the Lord our God. They who are strong in the Lord find the way easy and light, and very bright, even as he promised. My yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Matthew 11:30. The Lord's self cometh quickly, and his reward is with him. Our vision continually expands. No sooner do we desire a thing than it is before us, because we are now living in his kingdom, which is spiritual existence. We are his, and he is ours. We are he, and he is all there is of us. He is indeed our beloved self. The taking of the name of the One brings us a joy and a glory all transcendent, unspeakable beyond words to tell. Sacred writings of the East are voluminous with such passages of the following. Just as in springtime there comes to trees an increase of beauty and other qualities, so to the seer of the real self, who is contented in the enjoyment of the bliss of the self, there surely comes an increase of light, power, and intelligence. The ego mind and its creation being emptied out, the self alone remains, shining without hindrance. As a small animal cannot raise its head when the ocean overflows, so this little animal cannot raise its head in the state of self-illumination. When the real self is realized as the one reality, there remains only the real self, which is pure consciousness. On the other hand, while the ego sense survives, the world appearance is inescapable. Truth does not concern itself with miracles and demonstrations. As the light is revealed to us, we love to abide in it. Darkness or imperfection cannot remain. He that imagines the least difference between himself and the truth itself cannot be free from fear or limitation. Only so long as there is an identification of oneself with the intellect or ego is there an appearance of conditioned existence. The little self or personal intellect is only apparent as long as one has not perceived the great self, the eternal real self, and through devotion accepted this transcendental real self alone. All suffering is due to ignorance of the real self. He that loves the truth and subdues his whole being to the love of truth shall find it. Perfect love of truth means a perfect readiness to renounce whatever shall be found to be untrue. One must renounce the love he bears to his present impure belief, so that the truth may reign supreme in his heart when he has found it. Heart, love, spirit, mind are all names of one and the same thing, the self. Those who want to realize for themselves the reality of the real must turn from the world and seek the truth within the heart. Then they will experience the concrete presence of the self. When the real self is sought and found, it will be found that it was never bound, but is forever perfect and free. He alone shall find the self who is powerfully attracted to him. To him the self reveals himself as he really is. From the Upanishads. Identified with the one mind, we behold the one presence to be the whole of us, and the whole of everyone, even as the sun is in its entire light. If one could ask of the light of day, "What are you?" what would it answer? It would not reply, "I am light," but would answer, "Truly, I am the sun." So it is with us. When we are asked, "Who are you?" we do not say, "I am myself," but answer truly, "I am he, I am the self, I am the one." The self is free from evil, old age, death, and grief, even hunger and thirst. With true desires, true volitions, the self is that which should be sought after. He who has found the self and realized it loves the self, delights in the self, revels in the self, rejoices in the self. To recognize and stay the reality which is eternal, secure, is true being. Upanishads. Beloved, seek the divine of you alone, the presence which is the whole of you, that which cannot be sick, which cannot fear, that which is your true and only being, God. This is our pinnacle of glory, beyond which there is nothing to attain. In the realization of oneness, duality can no longer be found. Joy and gladness are ours, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. We shall come effortlessly, spontaneously, gloriously into spiritual light, spiritual peace, spiritual freedom, spiritual effulgence, spiritual existence itself. Our divine romance, our intimate experience with our real self, is our assurance that we are established on high. We recall the prophet ringing note, "Get thee up into a high mountain, behold your God," Isaiah 49. Spirit is known through revelation. He who has found spirit is spirit. Now we have received, not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit which is of God, that we might know the things that are freely given to us of God. 1 Corinthians 2:12. Recently a letter reached me containing the following paragraph. Everyone is living in his own world, which is of his own making. Everyone thinks for himself. For instance, I have a brother who does not believe in the truth, nor wants to have anything to do with it. In fact, all the time he is moving about in his own monotonous circle, steeped in old theology. Right now his thoughts are filled with sickness and the impending need of an operation. It is plain that we can help another only when he seeks our help or is willing to listen to us. Reading through to the end of that paragraph, I, the author of this book, was stirred to the depth. So glaringly lay exposed to me the diabolicalness of such belief. Simultaneously a light, brilliant, and breathtaking electrified me like a bolt out of a blue, as everywhere I saw people being sentenced to the result of their own thinking, taught that they have a mind of their own, when in reality it is not so at all. Never could there be one God, one mind, and multiple personal minds beside, each to be consulted, treated, changed, or regenerated. Right at this time there was a member of my own family planning for an operation for a condition which had troubled him for several years. Here was the very opportunity I needed to challenge the deplorable teaching that we should not attempt to help one another except upon his request, and also to explode the false hypothesis that each one is responsible for his own thinking. I accepted this undertaking for the glory of God, John 11:4, and would tell no man. Fixing my vision on eternal existence to be the eternal fact of being, I knew that I had nothing to do with the personal mind of John or with his sick thoughts. The fact that he was disinterested in truth mattered not, nor that he had previously refused my offer of help. Only one thing mattered. Only one thing was of importance to me. What am I seeing? What am I believing? Identified wholly with the Spirit which is of God, I could not consider healing anyone or anything, least of all John and his thoughts. My whole responsibility lay in turning from the spirit of the world to the Spirit which is of God, that I might behold in a glorious and ever-expanding way the things that are freely given us of God. With devoted all-pure love for the one alone, I took up the book, Light of the Eternal, and turned to the chapter entitled The All is Unity, to fully absorb its presentation of the analogy between the sun and its light and God and his identities. Vividly I saw that the light of the sun was the radiation of the sun, and the rays had no light of their own at all. How utterly impossible for a ray to become darkened, impure, or impaired, for the sun in its unfailing and everlasting light, its source and substance, its total existence. Every ray is the perfect sun itself. I then turned to our infinite selfhood, and likened it to the sun, and ourselves as infinite distinct identities. I likened to the sun's rays of light, and as boundless, immeasurable, infinite, I knew everything to be God, even as the Scriptures declare. There is none besides me, I know not any. Do not I fill heaven and earth? It was transparent to me that his rays had no responsibility to be light of itself, neither have we responsibility of ourselves to create or to sustain our health and wholeness. God possesses all, an indivisible totality which is everywhere and everything. I saw every identity to be the radiation of God with no responsibility to save, heal, change, or perfect anyone. The infinite to be a unit, where not only all in the one, but all are the one, nothing separate anywhere. Intuitively I knew that we must accept one God, one mind, one life, one truth, one being, one substance, one consciousness, one absolute to be everyone. With vision pure and illumined, I beheld every identity of God being to be God being. I saw John to be one of these identities, having no mind, thought, will, or being his own, no personal responsibility. He was living, moving, and have his being in the infinite, indivisible one, which holds everything within itself, acting as one, all in unity. I saw that no sickness or darkness had entered into John. He did not need anything. Everything is God, and everything is God's. With my whole heart I beheld the instantaneous presence everywhere, everything fully held by him, who does not change and will not fail, and in him everything that is unfailing finds duration. As rays of sunlight are not emanations extending from the sun, but are the brilliance of the sun itself, even so identities of God are the brilliance of his glory, the express fullness of his being. Absorbed in the light itself, I had entered the perfect by the perfect. I was seeing the one as the one. I was beholding the infinite by its own brightness, even as the light of the sun can be seen by its own light alone. In a wonderful way I knew that sooner could the stars fall from the heaven than John can be responsible for personal thoughts, or be dependent on anyone or anything for healing. For the one is the kingdom, and the power and the glory of us all forever. A day or so later, John's wife telephoned me that something wonderful was happening to John. All pain had vanished. He was free of the trouble he had contended with for so many years. He could not account for the wonderful freedom he was experiencing. He was happy and well, radiant and free. Dear friend, is there someone in your family or in your world whom you have been seeing as opposed to truth, in need of deliverance? Then here now is your opportunity. Your divine romance has begun. Identification with the divine mind so complete that you will enter the perfect by the perfect, and thus experience the all as in unity. This is the greater works which the Bible promises. Your glory is now ever with you. Your divine expansion is without end. A realization of living truth is possible for us all without lapse or variableness, since truth is our very own being always. As the infinite one is fulfillment and completeness in itself, so am I fulfillment and completeness in myself. For every indivisible part of the one is the one, and there is none beside. The one beholds itself in everyone. The one experiences itself in everyone. The one fulfills itself in everyone, no one left void. How else could the one be all in all? How else could there be an instantaneous presence everywhere? The one is all nations, and all nations are the one. Who shall not fear thee, O Lord, and glorify thy name? For thou only art holy, for all nations shall come and worship before thee. Today is God's day. Today God alone is the answer. No book will answer the needs for today. No religion will be sufficient. No leader or teacher. God alone is our perfect answer. This is God's day. The universe of God is without personalities, doctrines, or creed. God governs. God is all. Whosoever would enter into the universe of God must be willing to part with everything that has to do with getting, demonstrating, becoming. It is utterly impossible for any sickness or sin to be in the universal God. For the mind of the invisible whole is the mind of everyone, the life of everyone, the existence and experience of everyone. Within the infinite whole there is nothing to be overcome or destroyed, no one in need of anything, for everyone is fully held by him in the perpetual rhythm and radiance of being. To see this universe, to enter into it, and to experience it, one must obliterate personal ego. The hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipper shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Spirit is indivisible life, indivisible mind, indivisible substance, indivisible existence. Life is not physical, life is not material, life is not mental. Life is spiritual. Mind is not physical, mind is not human, mind is not mental, mind is spiritual. The physical, the material, and the mental all represent the flesh, which is enmity against God. They that are after the mental do mind of things of the mental, but they are after the spirit the things of the spirit. Spiritual life, spiritual mind, spiritual existence is the one indivisible God. They who would be one with God must be one with spirit. There is no unity but in spirit. They who worship God in spirit, they who enter into the kingdom through spiritual revelation, are of pure mind and pure heart. The life, mind, and being of everyone is here. In the spiritual kingdom of God, the all as unity. Spiritual revelation alone convinces us that life is indivisible. Life is one. To be this life, to be this one, we must of necessity lay aside forever whatever ways are opposed to spirit. Spirit alone can see spirit. Spirit alone can enter spirit. Spirit alone is spirit. In the kingdom of spirit no provision is made for healing. Nothing can appear which defileth or maketh a lie. The one infinite, indivisible mind of you, of me, and of everyone is pure and perfect, without beginning of days or end of years. This changeless, luminous life is ours now, whenever we put others away and take on this life as our very own. Our God is I am within our heart. I am within all. I am all as all. He who believes in God as the all of his life finds him. God is the self which shines out of pure heart. What went ye out to see, if not to behold the perfect by the perfect, to understand spirit by spirit? In spirit there is no sickness, no fear or darkness. Spirit is truth. Spirit is the real and the eternal. In no way can we enter into the kingdom of spirit but to be spirit. How can we be spirit? By putting duality away, by disidentifying ourselves with the everything that represents separateness, personal minds. To the extent that we do this, the quickening spirit is felt within us. We need not pray for it, treat for it, or die for it. It is ever present, yet known and felt in oneness alone. In oneness, we know that God is eternally realizing God. We are one, even as sunbeam and sun are one. O come, let us sing to the eternal. Let us come before him with thanksgiving, shouting to him songs of praise. I am the first, and I am the last. There is none beside me. I am the eternal. Preach the gospel of the kingdom oneness. Realize joy, health, peace, and wholeness to be the natural harmony of our spiritual being. None can attain it by any personal thoughts or treatments. Just spiritual realization on the actual truth of being will be quite sufficient. Identifying ourselves with the one mind alone, we do not concern ourselves with minds that are not of God, nor would we attempt to change what we know does not exist. The one spiritual mind recognizes no healing system, no mental practice, no way of personal thinking. It has no concept foreign to itself. To infinite mind, all is its own perfection everywhere. The one spiritual mind has nothing to do with demonstration, application, treatment, or results. It knows spiritual realization to be the only way to spiritual experience. Deep and all-absorbing love for spiritual light, spiritual truth, spiritual existence, and first and last in all who worship God this day in spirit and in truth. We know that reality is in nothing but reality. Truth is in nothing but I am. The love of the heart for reality is an understanding love. It knows God never gave us any of a mind of our own. The one mind is as sufficient for us as is the one Son. Our divine mind does not work, struggle, treat, deny, or affirm. It does not seek results. It does not puff up self. It sees nothing to overcome and nothing to destroy. This divine mind, this mind of spirit, shall be the mind of everyone who stops claiming a mind of his own and identifies himself as spiritual mind. How glorious and marvelous the mind of spirit, the light of spirit, the love of spirit within the heart. Never can anyone find oneness through a personal mind of his own. He cannot bring this mind to God. The way of our unity with God is provided. It is the spiritual way. It is the way of the heart. As one brings his heart to God, the false sense of personal mind fades away. The way of the heart is simple, easy, gentle, for those who love God more than their own life and more than any way of personality and mental practice. Because he hath set his love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high because he hath known my name. Psalm 91:14. Our spiritual love shall deliver us. What is his name? His name is Spirit. Agreement is in spirit. Where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. Matthew 18:20. Only in spiritual light, spiritual love, spiritual understanding, can there be agreement, peace, security, rest. We can understand one another only in his name. The way of spirit, love is spirit, life is spirit, revelation is spirit, abundance is spirit. Happiness is spirit, the realm of God is spirit. Blessed be the heart, for it can see the things of spirit. It can feel the touch of spirit. It can hear the voice of spirit. It can walk in spirit. Everyone that is worshiping God in spirit and not in mind purify himself because he has received the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it seeth him not, neither knoweth him. But ye know him, for he dwelleth with you, and shall be in you. At that day ye shall know that I am in my Father, and ye in me, and I in you. The Spirit alone are we all one. In spirit alone we speak the same language and worship the same God. How do we come into the Spirit? By sacrificing a mind, a will, and a way of our own, and by sacrificing a mind, a will, and a way of another. Christ, the Spirit of God in us, is our mighty I. Greater works. When the vision of him who is all there is, vast or small, dawns within us, the heart is at once freed from the fetters of attachment, egotism, and every form of separateness. When we behold God directly, at once all doubt disappears, as the night goes when the morning comes. Without this light, the outside world will always be full of shadows, but when this light is found, the whole universe glows with its radiance. Then the chains of karma, past, present, and future, are shattered, and one enjoys perfect freedom. The Upanishads. Until one receives inner light, he knows not what this light is. He believes mental practice to be the final word. Let him have just one taste of spiritual light, and he will know that God is within him. Not outside of him somewhere as something which he can never actually be, but only reflect. Everything is within us. Nothing is outside of us. The Upanishads. Those who identify themselves as mortals, thoughts or images, outside of the Infinite One, are denied light of the eternal until they remove the veil from their heart. But how can one hear this message unless he will listen to it? How can he behold the true light while his eyes are fastened upon the works of man, treating dream minds, healing dream things, and promoting the teaching of man instead of obeying the way of God? There is not work to be done by mental thinking, but love to be entered in by the heart. Love purifies, love humbles, love opens prison doors. Love is the light. Love is the Christ. Love cancels the personal. Love is the thinking of a pure heart. Asleep to the true way, one declares that he is not God, he is man. Awake to the true way, one declares that he is God, he is not man. He who speaks from the state of sleep speaks from human reason. He who speaks from the real state of being speaks from revelation. In sleep, mental practice, man holds one thought to get rid of another. His vain ambition is to practice healing by his personal thinking. What world has he seen, and what mind is he identified with? He has seen a dream world within himself, and he is identified with a mind that is not the mind of God. He declares that the truth of his doctrines rest upon its healing works, but if these works should fail to continue, then the doctrine would fall also. God requires no works of man to cast evil out of his world and uphold his works, seeing that he giveth to all life, breath, and all things. And his works were finished from the foundation of the world. If man could but see God's works, he would never attempt to set up a personal practice to heal anyone or anything. If one were awake instead of in the darkness, he would see the perfect one, and he would dispense with his personal works altogether. The bondage that one sees about him can be obliterated in one way alone, by the removal of its source. Its source is not out in the ether somewhere as an entity or animal called mortal mind. The source of bondage and tribulation is in man himself. in a mind, a will, a thought, and a vanity of his own. There is no way for him to be free while he identifies himself as a human being in human existence. Such a procedure is utterly preposterous. Definitely lay down one's life as a personal thinker is the eternal must. This is the greater work, to put off mortality and to rise from the dead. Who are the dead? Those who identify themselves as another beside the one, another mind, another self, another existence. There is no way for one to be free while he declares that he is not the one mind now, not the one self now, and that he is not in the real existence now. Like all other Bibles of the world, our Bible is a book of spiritual vision and revelation, requiring spiritual insight to penetrate its subtle wealth of mystical secrets hidden as they are in metaphor, simile, parable, and symbol. From the beginning of the book to the end, we find synonymous words such as sleep, mist, dream, veil, covering, mortal death. Other words of deep spiritual significance are Christ, awakening, vision, light, life, truth, revelation, one. No analogy is too subtle for him who is illumined. To him there is nothing hid that shall not be made known. He sees by the mind that set forth the parable. As in our natural sleep only a veil exists between us and our waking state, even so in man's spiritual sleep. Just a mist conceals from him his true identity. The world of today is fast waking up, getting ready for a great influx of spiritual light, sweeping, mighty, atomic. This light is even now rising on the horizon, clearly visible to those who can discern the signs of the time. The day of man's sleep in darkness comes to a spectacular end. The morning of the new era dawns. Spiritual illumination in us removes the veil which separates us from our real self. Spiritual illumination does not come as a healing means, as though to heal some form of sin or disease. It sets us free by annihilating personal ego, which is the source of all tribulation and fear. Spiritual revealment is the greater work taking place today. If Jesus could have taken sickness and sorrow out of the world for all of us, he would have done so. He was satisfied to remove it from his world, and so be the living way for all of us to follow. His crucifixion symbolizes the death of the ego, his resurrection, his identification as the one. After this was accomplished, he did no more healing work. He saw no one and nothing to be changed. Like sudden crackling of fire or rushing sound of wind, we may hear the stirring, vibrant words, "Awake, thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light." Ephesians 5:14. Taken literally, this sentence has no meaning, yet the parable of sleep and awakening carries a mighty light with it. Sleep and awakening are analogous to that which the Bible calls spiritual darkness and light. Where is darkness and where is light? In us. When one is in spiritual darkness, he becomes a personality to himself. Sleep, darkness, ego, personality are identical. One's awakening or departure from the human or mental state shall come through Christ or inner light as he humbles himself. Sleep does not change one in the least. His true state is always with him, but sleep keeps him ignorant of it. No application of thought can take sleep from him. Thought itself is sleep. If sleep or personal ego could be reached by a way of its own, such as thought treatment, there would be no principle to existence, no standard, no reality, no God. The greater work for all to accomplish today is this: divest oneself of that in him which sleeps. Nothing but his own sleep keeps him in bondage. He is in prison of his own making. The only way to awaken is for him to surrender human and mental ways and accept the true God. Nothing can prompt him to do this but absolute love and devotion for the real alone, and he leaves the mental for the spiritual. He leaves sleep for reality. When personality dies, dust to dust, then one is lifted into light that is within and around him. He rises as the real self. His universe rises with him. Every single illumination he has brings him that much nearer to the eternal day. What precious time is wasted before one perceives spiritually that the root of all suffering lies within himself. Man would like to place the cause somewhere else. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Proverbs 14:12. The one way to real existence, to life eternal in heaven itself, is the way set forth by the Christ. Surrender of the human and mental sense, and identification with the perfect, self-existent I am. Until one sees spiritually that the real self is the only self, he has no way to heaven and perfection. There is no way that the world of the mental and the world of the spiritual can mingle, any more than one can be asleep and awake at the same time. In sleep he sees only the things of his sleep, but as he wakens, things of the sleep vanish away, and he returns to the things which exist unchanged in his real state. One cannot walk the distance from sleep to awakening, from mental doctrines to eternal truth. He cannot treat his way across. There is a closet in himself, even while he sleeps, which he may enter into, and herein the spirit of humble can be revived, and his love be tender and strong enough to receive the light, wisdom, and knowledge. This will be his way out of human and mental bondage. Spiritual steps will continually be shown him. A light will precede him every step of the way, if he but keep himself humble and pure in spirit, never ceasing to wonder at the way of the closet within him. So close it is, so near verily his own heart. Here he can be pure enough to see, to hear, to feel, and to know the eternal God to be his real self, his perfection and everlasting glory. Though man build his mental healing system to the skies, and though he obey his personal doctrine implicitly, and have not light and illumination in himself, it profit him nothing. And that is there so greatly to be desired in this world that one would not part with it all in order to live in the kingdom. Mental thinking is sleep. Spiritual illumination is reality. Mental thinking is the ego which must perish, the very thing which must give up the ghost. We leave darkness and suffering through humility, confessing that of ourselves as human beings we can do nothing. The ego cannot live in humility. Humility and meekness is a stripping off of human or mental thinking. A mind that is not the real mind. Have mental thinking and humility ever been seen together? Personal ego and spirit, darkness and light? Our prophets and the great Jesus taught humility to be the way of God. Death on the cross symbolizes the death of a mind and thought which is not the one I am. When personal mind dies, then we live. Until then, one exists in darkness called human existence. To live is Christ, and to die is to gain. To have spiritual light within ourselves is to live as the real self in real existence now. No wonder man has never been able to demonstrate over the death of a body. No mental work can boast of this accomplishment. The body will continue to die until death itself dies. This death is the way to life, not death of the body, but death of that in oneself which keeps him from saying, I am the truth, I am the light, I am the perfect self, I live in spiritual existence now. It may often be wondered in these days why these studying mental science do not hasten to accept the ascending way of the Absolute, and so leave the position of duality and confusion for that of peace and oneness. Remember this, until the ego is surrendered, and one begins to think with his heart, he is necessarily imperfect, and so cannot grasp the fact of perfection. Many times Jesus mentioned the dullness and hardness of hearts. In his parable and teaching, he knew how to talk to those who would awaken sufficiently to understand him, and he knew how to talk to those who kept their hearts tightly sealed from him. They pretended to want the real things of life, but they were unwilling to humble themselves. For this reason he called them hypocrites, liars, deceivers, blind guides. He said to them, One is your master, even Christ, and whosoever shall exalt him shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. To those of us who are awake from sleep, how simple and transparent the whole of Jesus' teaching. Nothing now remains hidden in his language that we cannot understand. What subtle darkness lies in the metaphysical teaching that one knows of truth only as much as he can demonstrate, and that he can demonstrate only what he understands. Day and night one tries to know more and to prove more, but truth is not in mental practice. Truth is God in us. Truth never heard of man's demonstrations. I am knows nothing but I am. One knows the truth only as he turns from personal self and ways and from sleepers. Loving God devotedly and all-absorbingly, he purifieth himself. To him truth can be revealed. In darkness, no one will claim to be the truth and acknowledge life, power, and divine mind to be his very own. Naturally, being estranged from the heart, he cannot have illumination, and without illumination he cannot hear the language of truth and behold perfection reality. Let him who reads the lines pause to examine his mind and thinking. Is it pure? Is it single-visioned? Is it identified as the perfect divine mind? If not, then such mind and thinking must die. Never exalt it, never believe that can be exalted to high places. Accept not its claim to translate itself into the mind of God. Sooner could the heavens fall than things of our sleep and dream come out into our waking state or unreality become real. God-mind, exists without beginning or end. It is infinite, it is one, it is alone. This mind belongs to all who sacrifice self-thinking for it. The price must be paid. Identified with God-mind, truth shines forth effortlessly within one's heart like sunshine. Man's healing works have helped him greatly. There is no denying this, but let him not try to mix his ways with truth. The hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. John 4:23. As this hour advances, man shall neither buy nor sell mental treatments. He shall receive deliverance through spiritual light alone. How short-sighted and shallow for him to continue fixing over his dreams while he himself remains asleep. What a fearful mistake he makes, believing that the cure of human ills is the knowledge of truth. Is he not still identified with human existence where death is inevitable? Verily, to identify oneself as a human being in a human existence is to be ignorant of truth. He has built his house upon the sand. A doctrine being set forth before the world today is that God is outside of us, that God and reality are not within us, that we are not in God nor God in us, that we are a reflection which has no life, power, mind, being, or eternality of its own. Moreover, the doctrine claims that inequity is not in us, that it is outside of us, unlocated, and that we should repudiate all evil thinking as our own. Not only is this doctrine contrary to the teaching of Jesus, but it is contrary to all Bibles of the world. They all teach that light and darkness, heaven and hell, and even the world itself are within us, and that we must confess our wrong thinking and doing before we can experience the reality of God. Let one decide for himself if our Bible places God, reality, Christ, within us as follows. The kingdom of God is within you. Luke 17:21. The Father dwelleth in me. John 14:10. The Spirit of God dwelleth in you. 1 Corinthians 3:16. I will dwell in them. 2 Corinthians 6:16. Christ in you. Colossians 1:27. The Spirit of truth in you. John 14:17. Relative to the evil as in ourselves. Within ye are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. Matthew 23:28. All these evil things come from within the man. Mark 7:23. Cleanse first that which is within the cup. Matthew 23:26. We must confess our mistakes. Confess your faults. John 3:7. Every one of us shall account of himself to God. Romans 14:12. If we say that we have not sinned, we make him a liar, and his word is not in us. 1 John 1:10. Humble yourselves. James 4:10. If it were true that there is no reality in us, that reality is outside of us in the original, which only reflect, that evil thoughts are not in us and we must not acknowledge them, then all the Bibles of the world are wrong. Let each make his own decision, but remember this, whosoever transgresseth and abideth not in the doctrine of Christ hath not God. 2 John 9. When we leave the darkened sense through our own surrender of it, only then we are able to say with authority that God, heaven, reality, and Christ are within us. We are one. We know that there is not one, an original, another, a reflection. God is one God, total absolute. He is in us. We are in him. We are one. Disidentified with sleep, it is easy and natural for us to identify ourselves with infinite power, everlasting life, immaculate mind in heaven. We have all this of our own because God is one and indivisible, and we are he and no other. Nothing of Jesus' teaching would ever lead one to believe that lie did not claim power and might of his very own, and that he was not God, but a reflection of God. Decide for yourself whether it was God or someone else called a reflection who said, all power is given unto me in heaven and on earth. Matthew 28:18. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Revelations 22:23. Asleep, one cannot say, I am God. He places God away from him as far as he can. He feels the same way about suffering or tribulation. Never could he imagine that he is only one responsible for it. In sleep, one cannot know the truth. Awake, he declares, I am the self, I am the kingdom, I am the all of my world. Nothing is outside of me. I have never left the kingdom. There is no personality. There is no separateness. There is no unreality. I am the first and the last. I am perfect, complete, invariable, imperishable, immaculate, absolute, eternal. God is all there is of me. I am none but God, the indivisible one. Sooner or later everyone shall be able to say such words and understand them. Sooner or later everyone must turn from darkness to light, from mind to heart, and from personal ways to the doctrine of the living Christ. Renouncing separateness, surrounding himself utterly, one may find himself in a vacancy where everything is dissolving around him, leaving him stripped of fiction, sleep, and dream. For an instant he is alone. Then the veil drops from him. In the place of his nakedness, a brilliant light envelops him. He is the light. He hears the voice. Every word is precious beyond comparison. He is born again. He is free. He knows I and God are one. Illumined by the glory of our own self, we know that we are the truth. We know that we walk in our own light. We know that we think with our own divine mind. We know that God is in us and we are in God. We know that God is all. All is God. We know that the original is all there is. There is nothing else. In parables of profound depth, Jesus described how we are to cast the personal out of ourselves. Said he, "Except the corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit." John 12:24. What is it of us that must die? That of us which believes in separateness, duality, otherness, that which considers becoming, instead of being, translating instead of accepting, and thinking instead of realizing. One may pass through many deaths of the body before he is willing to let personality die, but when he returns this dust to dust, like the grain of wheat, then he has cut off sorrow and tribulation, even death itself at the root. The greater work, therefore, for today is to give up the ghost of personality and sleep. In another similar parable, Jesus taught, "Now is the judgment of this world. Now shall the prince of this world be cast out, and I, if I be lifted from the earth, shall draw all men unto me." John 12:32. Who or what is the prince of this world? Not a mythical thing in the atmosphere. It is the in oneself which stands separate and apart from God, that which declares, "I am not the divine mind. I am not in spiritual existence. I am a man, a mortal, a human mind, and a mental being." One's world is himself. Here is what he must look for, the God which must be brought to an end. Everything of iniquity, whether sin, sickness, or death, is identified with man himself. He can leave the position of man for the state of his real self only as he confesses his mistake and opens the door of his heart to Christ's light. Then he enters a new age to behold a new heaven and a new earth. The identical teaching that is contained in our Bible is found also in the sacred books of the East, as in the following illuminating words. Apart from the ego, there is neither death nor birth. This vicious circle of death and rebirth is sustained only by the primary ignorance, which is the ego. The ego itself is death, because he is the negation of truth, which is life. He must not only be dethroned, but must be put to death, for there is no safety so long as he survives. Until this sense is surrendered, spiritual teaching cannot be understood. Deliverance is not in top of the sky, nor deep inside the earth, nor on the earth. It is just the extinction of the mind with all its desires. He that finds a self, who is concealed in the heart, shall enjoy profound happiness, which is a simultaneous fulfillment of all desires. For a very small price, the surrender of the ego, this infinitely great one, the self, is to be had, but this small price has to be paid. The egoless state is a state of unclouded reality, where it shines as the pure I am. This is the natural state of the self as the sole reality. The natural state is true birth, because death is dead once for all. Until such revelations take place, one is not free from bondage. There is no need to become the self. The idea of becoming is on the face of itself absurd. We are the self always. We are never other than he. Deliverance is ours here and now, if only we lose the ego. Deliverance is the state where the truth alone shines and nothing else. He that still retains the ego is necessarily imperfect. When the heart melts in love, and the cave of the heart where he shines is reached, then the eye of awareness opens, and he is realized as the real self. The Upanishads. The paradox is before us. Flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. And yet in my flesh shall I see God. Inner illumination alone makes possible such understanding as can reconcile these apparently contradictory statements. Flesh and blood definitely relates to the unredeemed state, the state of sleep and darkness in which man remains if he is without the desire or will to leave it. Satisfied in his darkness, not seeking to leave it, he cannot enter reality, which is the kingdom of God. The verse, "Yet in my flesh shall I see God," can be explained as follows. Though man exists as a body of flesh, human state, yet he can, if he will, desire and long for the good and the true. His earnest desire and longing will stir his heart into an awakening if he keeps his heart set on God and continues to love devotedly and without ceasing. Finally, he will receive illumination, which leads him to self-revelation, where he sees God, the perfect self, and the things of reality. He that loses his life shall find it. Matthew 10:39. When one loses his life as a sleeper and a dreamer, then he wakens as a self. The waking and the ending of sleep are simultaneous until his relinquishment of himself as a personal mind and thinker. He is denied knowledge of the real and the eternal. Surely this way is just and fair. It is the only way. It should now be clear to the reader that the physical and mental ways which bring help and healing are taking place in one's sleep. They are ways which man himself has discovered to help him make the darkness less fearful and difficult. In the East, they allude to this as the mercy of the Lord. The absolute way, disregarding the ways of the palliative altogether, seek, as Jesus did, to waken man from sleep. Not only then did his troubles vanish without treatment, but he himself begins to turn to his reality, his perfect state. If sincere and faithful, he will soon be identified with eternal life, which is purity. Spiritual light in us shall always be sufficient for us to dethrone personal sense. In purity of heart there is no darkness. Throughout the Bible, the word within signifies the heart. To him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame, and am set down with my Father in his throne. Revelation 3:21. We are to follow in Jesus' footsteps. The word overcome bears no relation to curing a disease, but to dethroning personal ego. Only when this takes place are we aware of reality and perfection and sit in the throne of our real self and being. And God himself shall be with them and be their God. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, no crying, neither shall be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Revelations 21:3-4. Beloved, the God that shall be with us and shall wipe away tears, death, sorrow, and pain is the God within us, right here and now. The light, which is self-illumination, the omnipotent Christ. What other God do we need or can we but the God which was in Christ Jesus? This is the one God, the indivisible God, the eternal God. There is no other God. The God within us is our all-sufficiency now and forever. The accuser, the beast, the great city Babylon, mentioned in the book of Revelation, refers to the same identical sleep, personal mind or ego. When we are identified with God and his Christ, the perfect self and its self-effulgence, the sleep is ended. Blessing and honor and power be unto him that sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb forever and ever. Revelations 5:13. The Lamb is purity and divine love. The blood of the Lamb is the endless life of infinite love and purity. Only love gives all. Only love receives all. Blessed are the pure in vision. Blessed are they who love reality with all-absorbing devotion. We do not lose our spiritual identity. All individual spiritual identities are in of the infinite, indivisible one, and here there ever abide as this one. Since surrender to the real self is the culmination of devotion, the seeker of deliverance needs to cherish devotion to the real self. When this devotion becomes perfect, then will it be possible for him to enter on and on. The self will ever reveal himself. He that finds this self shall enjoy profound happiness, which is the simultaneous fulfillment of all desires. The Upanishads. He of meekness and glory proceeds onward to fuller and more complete understanding of the greater works. John 14:12. Finally, we shall be so absorbed in the light and love of the eternal that we shall altogether transcend the human and go to the Father. Enter into life eternal now without physical death. The only death there is the cancellation of human sense and personal ego. Physical death does not cancel this. It must be canceled while we are living. Entrance into reality itself, the kingdom of heaven, and the cancellation of personal ego are simultaneous and are fulfilled in the transcendental words, I go unto my Father, John 14:12. This is indeed the greater works, to obliterate the personal, and so without physical death enter into life eternal. Oneness. Dearly beloved, do you take the perfect infinite one to be your only life, your only mind, your only existence, body and being eternally? Do you give your heart to oneness in all beauty, tenderness, in all glory and love, in freedom and light, to honor and cherish throughout eternity? In the secret place of the Most High, your heart, do you see oneness in self-illumination to be the living, ever-present Christ? And are you ready now to sing the eternal song of praise? Beholding the all as unity, beholding everyone as he is in the life and light of the eternal, then sing the song of David, on thee, eternal one, I set my heart, the eternal reigns. End of chapter, end of book. This audio presentation of Greater Works by Lilian DeWaters has been brought to you by audioenlightenment.com. Copyright 2014, all rights reserved.